on you every time you walk in the set, or maybe it's like a chain. Overnight, this interview that Donald Trump did with Russian television, when he said it's unlikely that in his mind, that the Russians were meddling and trying to meddle in the U.S. election with that cyber attack. Then you have Republicans like Lindsey Graham say things like this. Other than destroying every instrument of democracy in his country, having opposition people killed, dismembering neighbors through military force, and being the benefactor of the butcher of Damascus, he's a good guy. I think you can tell Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator, is clearly joking here. Are you hoping that Donald Trump is joking as well in his support of who's a good guy?
No, look, I think Donald Trump is speaking sort of in a generic sense that, the war on terror is a worldwide effort. And if it's possible to get allies, even if it's Russia against ISIS, it's something good. And let's not forget that this gives the Trump campaign, like me, an opportunity to always pivot to Hillary Clinton, who made it a formal policy of the State Department to have a Russian reset to mend our relationship with Vladimir Putin and the past president.
Why put the two things in the same sentence? Why not say, I disagree with how President Obama has handled our foreign policy, and also just, why do you have to say anything about the strength or weakness of Vladimir Putin?
This is month number, 10 now, where we finally have to realize that Donald Trump speaks a little bit different than sort of the political, diplomatic language that we've often seen before, and that's part of the reason why people like him.
Speaks a little bit different than what we have heard. That is absolutely true.
Understatement of the year.
Understatement of the day. It changes every. Don't set the bar too high. But here's the question, and maybe I'm missing something. In what universe, though, is this helping him? Who is this helping him with, Rebecca? Tell me.
What's really interesting, Kate, is that there was actually some polling done by The Economist and YouGov, Putin's favorability among Americans, and because this has been a persistent issue.
Right.
And in 2014, very low. I think it was negative 66 among Republicans. Now, net favorability closer to negative 20. And so Donald Trump is kind of bringing Republicans along with him as opposed to responding from signals from them. And so I'm not saying that it's helping him necessarily, but it's a really interesting trend that we're seeing. His whole brand politically is strength. And so that's what he's trying to project here. He likes Putin because he's a strong leader. Donald Trump says he will be a strong leader. I don't think it's necessarily helpful, though, because most people on both sides of the aisle are going to be saying that they think Putin is not a strong leader, not a good leader for his people.
Right.
And it's hard when you have all of those political headwinds working against you. So far, Donald Trump has shown he's very strong.
Well, and Hillary Clinton sure seems to think that no matter what, she thinks it's a great issue for her, Peter. Why is she jumping on this so much?
Well, think about what he's saying here, right? In what way is Vladimir Putin strong? The Russian economy has actually been terrible, right? Russia's been going backwards economically. It's not a thriving country. What he means by strength, essentially, is that he's a man who does not respect the rule of law, right? He's willing to basically do whatever he wants to stay in power and get what he wants done, right? This would be kind of amusing if it weren't for the fact that Donald Trump himself has shown so little respect for the rule of law in our own country, right? A guy who attacks judges, a guy who has said some very menacing things about the press, threatened to go after the owner of the Washington Post because he doesn't like the Washington Post coverage of him, a guy who has, where there's been violence at his rallies consistently, someone who's told the military to torture and violate international law. So it's not a surprise that Donald Trump kind of worships strength, but our political system is based on something fundamentally different than that. It's based on the idea that there are restraints on the strength of international people, of powerful people, because we follow something called the rule of law. I don't think Trump gets that very much.
You know what I find just a little bit fun, if we all can just take a pause and take a momentary walk down memory lane with you, Russ. You see how bad Putin is described right now? Do you remember when Mitt Romney was trashed at every turn when he was asked, when he said that Russia is our #1 geopolitical foe, and Democrats, they lit their hair on fire saying he was absolutely ridiculous and he was ridiculed.
Sure.
Where is the apology coming from Democrats now?
Sure. Well, and that was one of the things that Governor Romney did in the third debate against President Obama. They ridiculed him, and it turned out it was one of the things that a lot of fact checkers a year later and 2 years later said, you know what, Mitt Romney was right. Russia is our biggest geopolitical foe. But just look at this politically, and this is what I don't get. Either Donald Trump is saying these things because he means them, in which case it's really scary. Peter was saying that this is somebody who is he is strong because he is a dictator.
Right.
We do not like dictators
Right.
in our country. Or he's saying them because he's ignorant. And that, I don't know which one is scarier. It's because he's doing it on purpose, or he's doing it because he's ignorant. And then go back to your initial question, how does this help him politically? does this help with white suburban women? Does this kind of, give him more wiggle room with them in order to change their minds? Does it help him with Hispanics? Does it even
definitely won't help him with the LGBT community, considering the record that Vladimir Putin has with the LGBT
and I don't
community.
even know if this helps him with his base, with his, white middle-class base.
Does this help him with his base, though? The conspiracy theory that just won't quit, the birther conspiracy. Was President Obama born in this country? Now his campaign manager and everyone kind of around him is saying, yes, Donald Trump believes now that President Obama was born in this country after pushing that conspiracy for so long. Why isn't Donald Trump saying it, though? Do you want to hear him come out and say it?
Well, I don't think he's been asked in a formal interview whether he says it or not. No, I'm saying
100%.
within the past 2 weeks since Rudy Giuliani made a statement
Bill
and
O'Reilly
Kellyanne
just asked
Conway.
him.
I
But when
didn't
did he
see- I didn't
change
see
his
that,
opinion?
so
When did he change his opinion?
That's a good question, but I guess the
You
opinion is
would
that-
like to see him come out and say that?
Yeah, I think the case is pretty clear now that President Obama was born in the U.S. But again, this goes back to the same pivot that we debate ad nauseum, not just in this table, but amongst many people, whether or not this actually came from Hillary Clinton's circle.
It did not.
Except that PolitiFact in August 29th of this year said that that's mostly true.
Okay.
No.
They said they're supporters.
There were
Supporters of Hillary Clinton.
there were
But don't go
supporters
back
who
to that.
Who got fired
There were
from the campaign?
supporters of Hillary Clinton.
Who got
but there's
fired
no
from the campaign?
evidence that it came from the campaign itself,
But-
and they were fired.
Yes,
That's
from
the
the
key point.
campaign.
They were
But
fired.
you can't say
It's pretty different
you
than a
can't
guy.
say there's people in the campaign who didn't do that.
That's a guy that's pretty different from the candidate himself making this a crusade year after year.
That's a fair point.
Go to your corner. After a
Ding,
break.
ding, ding.
Ding, Zachy. I was just going to do that. Coming up, Hillary Clinton's campaign suggests that she's pressing the pause button on personal attacks against Donald Trump. But is the trash talking really over? I know. I'd be upset as well. This is all this election's about. The panel will weigh in.